We're several months into 2022, and it's time to assess your people strategy and plan. To help you, let's explore how HR leaders and teams review and adapt strategy to ensure it's dynamic and realistic. Welcome to Talking HR Trends with Natal and Tom. I'm Natal Dank.
And I'm Tom Haak.
And we explore the latest hot topics and business challenges impacting the people side of work. Stick around to the end for our practical top tip. And if you find this discussion valuable, please subscribe. Tom, what is your key message from this episode?
My key message from this episode is think big, but work small.
Ooh, I like that. Yes.
What is your key message out of this episode?
My key message is that strategy is iterative and you need to review, do a retrospective about how you're working on a regular basis to make it real. Okay, so we're one quarter into 2022 and it's time to review how our strategy is going. However, one caveat is if you haven't actually done any strategy for 2022, it's still a good time to do it, isn't it? You can do strategy at any time. What's your thoughts, Tom?
Absolutely, yeah. But it's always good to have a plan. It's surprising. I still come in quite some organizations where I ask, do you have a plan? And the answer is not really.
Don't overdo it, but yeah, it's good to have a plan. But also planning, you need to revisit that plan on a regular basis. And that's what we're going to review.
If you don't have a plan, I'll give you the 30 seconds, a summary of how you make a plan.
Go for it.
I can do that very quickly, and it's not so difficult to make a plan. But start always with what are big organizational issues. Start with that. And not a list of 20, but what are the key organizational issues we have to deal with. And then let's map out which HR interventions could help with those issues. If we want more innovation, okay, what can we do? Can we do recruiting? Can we do development? Can we do pay? You know that. But that's the kind of the basic architecture. Then say, hey, but what are developments in the world? What are the trends? How can we use the trends to increase our impact in those areas? Then you make a selection. Say, okay, we'll do this. We don't do that. And then you put it in your plan. And then talk about it with the people for whom you're working.
Exactly.
Don't develop your plan in isolation. First, check with your clients are these really the issues?
No, that's really good. I would say, and prioritize ruthlessly using value and impact. Don't go after too much and be very realistic about your capacity to actually deliver against what's in that strategy.
You say we are already in March. Time to revisit the plan, but many organizations have not really even started.
Exactly, I know, and that's the point.
The year seems to be too short.
Yeah.
January, February, and then there's the summer holiday. In some organizations, it looks as if there's only 6 months to implement the plan.
Exactly. And I think that's when you mentioned, so first of all, it's not just this annual task that you spend lots of time on and you make it all pretty. And then, as you said, you spend 3 months communicating. Actually, immediately following setting the strategy is you go and talk about, all right, well, what are we delivering in the first month? And what does that look like? And what's the tangible value?
Yeah.
And how would we measure it? And then what will we most likely be then focusing by the second month and the third month?
Yeah.
And I think if you start to work in those cycles, and that is part of actually putting it into team level backlogs, what are different teams working on as a result of that strategy, and how do you know you're actually delivering against it? Because there's some big topics in strategy and you're not going to be able to do them all at the start of the year, but you want to be able to get to certain ones by delivering against others.
Yeah.
And so it's understanding that flow, isn't it? Yeah.
And we can refer to many of our episodes we have already published, like how do you make an HR plan? How do you apply design thinking? How do you work in agile? There's numerous episodes you can use to help you to design and implement your HR plan.
Yeah, I know that how do you build a people strategy that actually works is a very popular episode. Yeah, so definitely refer to those. But I think what you've also touched on there is that we're, several months into 2022, and we've already seen a big shift in the context in which we're operating. So the pandemic is shifting, and we're actually seeing people back in the office or back in retail environments and factories. So now this, the need to evolve your hybrid solutions is really going to the next level. We've then looking at war in Europe. We've got an energy crisis. We've got inflationary pressures. So your company or your organization is needing to respond in a different way. This means while you need that sort of long-term vision and roadmap, you have to assess strategy in the real time, don't you? And you need to reassess the priorities you've set because some things would have shifted by now.
You already said it, but strategy is a living thing. It's not dead. So one of the first things in your constant revision is going back to those organizational issues. Are they really still actual? Or through the war or the end of Corona or other things, do we have to adapt and to change? So it helps to be in the business, in the organization, and constantly check whether you are doing the right thing. So that is, I think that's one thing. The second thing is going back to your backlog and say, well, are our priorities still the right priorities? Or
Definitely.
should we reshuffle the backlog?
Yeah.
So it's good to have a plan, but it's always good to adapt your plan when needed and not say, but this is the plan and we have to stick to the plan. No, that's not necessary. There's always also new developments. Not only in the strategic objectives, but technology-wise, new things are possible. Or there is money available for certain projects. So, okay, well, let's use that money to accelerate certain projects. Or you have hired a fantastic new person in your team who is very knowledgeable and skilled in a certain area. So, well, we better benefit from the skills we have at hand.
And so therefore, it's okay to kill things in your strategy, Tom. So particularly things that you haven't worked on yet and actually aren't relevant anymore. So I think this relates to targets that get set as well. So, we've often had these annual KPIs and targets where actually you need to be very realistic about that and how do they evolve based on what's happening in the real time. And also good mechanisms, and I know I think we should talk about this in another episode, is things like OKRs, so objective key results. And to use those effectively, generally you're doing that at least on a quarterly or half-yearly basis, sometimes monthly, aren't you, with those kind of mechanisms?
Absolutely. And we have also discussed that earlier, the retrospective, but take time for reflection. And it pays to say after a couple of months, now it's a good time, end of March, take a step back and say, hey, where are we? How is it going? Are we really focusing on the right things? Is our capacity good? Is the team the right team? So take time for reflection and see what you can do to adapt your plan.
Definitely. And that should be part of your cycle, shouldn't it,
Absolutely.
Tom? Yeah, exactly.
And I've just published a blog post around a checklist. Mm-hmm. So people can look at my website. It's called something like Checklist for Your 2022 HR Plan.
Okay, great.
There's some good questions. I won't go through all the questions, but one of those things is around, are you really using employees as co-creators? That's the thing I like. Are you really using people as co-creators?
I like that,
And often you see teams work too much in isolation.
Yep.
Use the creativity of your workforce. That can help a lot. And it has a lot to do with, are you really focusing on the people? Many HR teams are so focused on efficiency and implementing the new HR system. And if that is ready, then we can do some other things. So they are necessary, those projects, but they suck away a lot of energy.
They do. And I think you've got to approach them with the concept of, how do we get sort of a minimal viable product out, or how do we get something tangible and get a delivery out? So what's the value on a sort of monthly basis or a quarterly basis, rather than just thinking of the whole project as a kind of big, long line?
But it's difficult if you're implementing Workday or Oracle or Cornerstone.
Yeah, but I think with most of those, you can definitely implement parts of it first. You can go to different parts of the business and test and make sure that it's working, and see those as sort of key milestones to achieve, rather than, as you said, just this big, massive project that goes for 2 years. So at least break it down into key cycles as well.
Absolutely. And keep asking for feedback in the organization. Are we doing the right things? What can we do to help you to do your work better? Don't take things for granted.
So I think it's review the products and services that you're actually delivering, get data on that. And then, as you said, do a retrospective around how you're working, the tools you're using, how you're collaborating, and what you can do to improve. So let's go on to 2022 strategy and what we think should be in people's backlogs or what we're coming across. When I'm speaking to HR leaders, their sort of the hot topics is definitely, of course, evolving or continuing to evolve the hybrid solution in the workplace and where their stance is on that. But interestingly, we, as we've tried to emphasize, don't blueprint this. So I have seen some organizations saying, right, everyone must be back 3 days a week without really testing out what does that mean for an office environment. So how do you keep revolving that? How do you get information on that? How are you applying design thinking, again, to that kind of topic? Well-being is a key one. Definitely this continued focus on agile organizational design, so flexibility in how you build your teams and build your workforce. Sourcing and developing skills in response to the Great Resignation, or what we like to call the Great Reshuffle, or the Great Opportunity. Definitely diversity, equity, inclusion. And some areas or some companies are focusing more on sustainability and net zero targets. What would you like to see on people's 2022 backlog?
You mentioned most of the subjects I have on my list, but how can we transfer our HR practices to more skill-based? I think that takes a lot of effort and it's not easy. And what I see, I spoke to some organizations last week who were working on projects. They tend to approach it again in a relatively old-fashioned way, what I see. They do it a little bit as talent management. They replace talent with skills. And they say, first, we have to have the skill taxonomy.
Yes, exactly.
And preferably, we design our own skill taxonomy. Yeah. Maybe not. And then we have to map all the skills we have in the organization. The energy is already, skill taxonomy, and then make an inventory of everybody. Maybe try to find ways to do it in a more creative way.
Yeah.
Focused on those areas that are most critical for the organization. There's no need to do everything. In many organizations, there are capabilities that are crucial for that organization and often unique to that organization. I would focus on that and say, where are we there? Instead of doing everything company-wide. The skill element is very powerful if we don't simplify too much. So it's not only about skills. It's continuously also about, you could say, personality and cultural fit. It's always those three. It's not done in a week. It's not done in 2 weeks. So in the 2022 plan, I would expect many organizations just to start with that.
Yeah. And you've made me think, so some projects I've worked on recently where we were focusing on a topic and then we were trying to solve everything through this one project.
Yeah.
And I think this happens in HR and people teams where we're focusing on performance and reward, but then we're trying to solve things for succession planning and talent. And so actually, as you've said, focus on the problem to solve about that topic and do smaller experiments and minimal viable products to solve that problem. And as I think the skills one is a really good example, go and focus on an area of the business where actually there's a real need to quickly upskill some teams or develop some new skills, source some new skills, and just focus there to begin with rather than trying to map all your skills across the organization.
Yeah.
So what's the problem to solve and focus on that and sort of prioritize those problems.
That seems to be very difficult, what I see. You mentioned sustainability. I don't see too much of that, to be honest. So I would like to see more of that in the plans. What can we do also from an HR perspective to drive that subject?
Yeah. There was a conference that we were both at recently and there was chief people officer from a bank and they were talking about how that was part of their strategy. And it was interesting because they saw that as a key area to solve some of the skill question or the skill gap. So again, you could focus, there's two issues where you could focus by combining them and actually getting a result, again, by breaking it down into one part of the strategy and one part of the business. So I think that's a good example.
We say focus and make it small. At the same time, I would like organizations to, also HR teams, to be bold and transformative. Yes, you have to make it small and big.
Totally. Well, I think it's thinking big, but break it down into small, achievable actions, isn't it? Yeah. And small experiments. I think it's the experimental mindset that we're trying to really emphasize here.
But with big ambitions.
With big ambitions, yeah, definitely. There's no reason why you can't do something radical but just do it in one part of the business first to test how it goes. Yeah, definitely. Yeah. And so leading on from that is the whole piece around strategy is only good as execution. And I was reading in the Harvard Business Review the other day that apparently 90% of businesses fail to reach their strategic goals. So and you sort of mentioned this at the start, there's a lot of people talking about strategy, but actually it doesn't get delivered. So again, just sort of some final messages around how do you move beyond strategy looking good on paper and making it actually real and tangible and that it will get delivered?
Yeah, what can we say that people don't already know? Because execution is so important. Yeah, it's not rocket science, but you have to be disciplined. So it has a lot to do with discipline and following your routines. I was discussing with a friend yesterday, and she works in a consultancy organization. And there they always have too much work for too short time. That's typically in consultancy organizations. But they fool themselves. They say, oh, it's very important that we exactly promise our clients what we're going to deliver. But they always overpromise. And so it's also the discipline, not fooling yourself. But that happens a lot. We always say we can do it in a shorter time with less capacity. And that's not true. We have to be ambitious, but realistic. And that has to do with discipline. Looking at your backlog, saying, what can we do with the team we have here today? And then look at the team and share with the team, hey, team, can we do this? And then it should not be groupthink saying, well, I better not say that it's not possible because then I will be fired. No. People have to be honest, saying this is not possible. We are over-promising again.
No, I think that's a really good point. And do you think that maybe because HR, we tend to be people pleasers as well?
I think it has to do with being afraid. Also in those consultancy organizations, people don't stand up against their partners. Yes, partner, it's possible, but they think we're never going to do this.
You just made me think that also with HR and people topics, they're really big, aren't they? And they're quite vague. So there's this need to make it more tangible. So if you're working on well-being, what does that actually look like? And don't make these grand kind of statements around well-being. Actually talk about what you're going to deliver. Yeah,
but most people already have built the failure in. They know at the beginning, say, well, we're never going to realize it, but this is always the case. So who cares? I think we should let go of that. So more focused, being realistic. But it's very difficult to change.
It is. So stick to your routine. So this is, I suppose, strategy is, thinking outside the box and being creative, but then you turn to the discipline and routines to deliver. And I think that's key. Visualizing work, having regular cycles of review and retrospective, and also being realistic about capacity. What can you actually deliver now based on the team that you have, the skills that you have right now?
And that has a lot to do also with well-being, because we don't want to push people constantly to work more hours than they have to.
Definitely.
I see that constantly. People have to work too many hours. They're too busy. And we say well-being is important, but in many of the organizations, it's important, but not so important. And the level of stress, the level of burnout, and the level of people who are not happy at work, well, I don't think it's going down at the moment.
No, I agree. And so part of that is also being ready to kill things in the strategy, and also not everything is going to be a success. There's going to be some failure. There's going to be things that haven't worked. And so how do you review that and learn from that and move on? Yeah, definitely. Excellent. Thank you, Tom, for a really good discussion. And I really liked your how to do strategy in 30 seconds. That was very insightful. Thank you. That takes us on to the practical tip relating to strategy and reviewing your 22 plan. As Tom highlighted, it's all about review and retrospective. So have a regular cycle. We would advise at least monthly, where you look at that strategy and you're looking at your backlog and you review the work that you have achieved. So this is the products and services you're delivering, but this could be from policy that you've written to events that you've held, surveys that you've completed, as well as new initiatives in the employee experience. So what did you deliver? What was the impact? What's the data around that? What's the feedback around that? And what are you going to do in the next month to either continue that development or move on to the next key problem to solve. The other key one, of course, is a retrospective, and this is reviewing how you've worked. So this is the behaviors, this is how you communicate in the team, and this is the tools that you're using to get the job done. Aim to take one improvement, don't overdo it, just one improvement from your retrospective into that next cycle of work. And if you do this on a regular basis, review what you do and review how you do it, you will really bring that strategy to life, and it will be a dynamic and realistic execution, not just a plan. Thank you for your time.